Ever find yourself waiting endlessly at a big box pharmacy, feeling like just another number? At Tablet Pharmacy, they provide the personalized service you deserve. They offer free delivery and blister packaging options to make managing your medications easier than ever. Check their competitive prices online at tabletpharmacy.ca.
Welcome, friends. I am Cindy Thompson, and this is a Resilience Project. This is a space where stories are shared and possibilities are discovered. I invite you to partner with me in cultivating resilience among humans, one conversation at a time. In this conversation, we get to meet Ricky and Karen, who are this amazing couple with big hearts for helping others. With a keen awareness of the need to support children who are born with HIV positive and AIDS, Karen and Ricky have discovered so much about themselves and how a spark for starting an orphanage grew into so much more. Born in Vancouver, BC, and adopted into her family at birth, Karen knew by the age of 8 that she would one day open an orphanage. With an initial interest in teaching and a propensity for coaching team sports, Karen taught middle school and high school for 9 years in Fresno, California, and in Bangkok, as well as coached softball, volleyball, and basketball. Ricky was born in the inner city of Oakland, California, to a migrant father from Mexico and his mother a Mexican-American born in America. Earning a scholarship for basketball for Fresno Pacific University, Ricky completed a BA in social work and Spanish. Meeting one another through university and eventually enrolling in the YWAM Discipleship Training School in Honolulu, Hawaii, these two keeners were on their way to do missions work. Fast forward, it was after completing their master's degrees while raising 4 daughters, Ricky and Karen moved their family to Thailand to do church planting and start an orphanage. With Karen focused on starting an orphanage and Ricky pursuing his passion for sports, there are just so many aspects to the work that they are doing overseas. Ricky has not only coached at various international schools in Thailand, he now runs a missions group using basketball to bring college athletes to Thailand and Southeast Asia to play against various universities and put on basketball clinics for schools and poor communities. Karen's primary focus has been on the Abundant Life home, although there are a vast number of projects under this umbrella, too many to name right now. Their primary mandate is to take in children orphaned due to HIV/AIDS. In addition, they also have a program called Project Standing Strong, where they provide support to women and their children who are ready to leave the sex trade. One further program that we'll mention is called The Families Belong Together, which provides support to single moms and their children who otherwise would bring their children to orphanages. When I think about resilience, sometimes we discover a strength within ourselves in the midst of helping others. I think this conversation will speak to the passion Ricky and Karen have for the people, their dedication to following their purpose, and what can happen when we pay attention to that little spark inside of us. So Karen and Ricky, I'm so pleased to be able to chat with you today all the way from Thailand. It's very early in the morning here, but much later there in your evening. So I appreciate your staying up to do this with me.
We're happy to be here.
Yes, I'll greet you from Thailand. It's Sawadee Krap.
Now remind me of where specifically in Thailand are you folks?
We are located in central Thailand, just an hour outside of Bangkok on the eastern seaboard in a place called Chonburi, which means the water city.
Well, just being next to the water would be wonderful in itself.
Yeah, we really love it here. And it's a beautiful place and beautiful people.
Well, I look forward to learning more through your eyes and through your experiences. So you went to a YWAM together on a missions trip to Thailand. How many years ago was that?
That was about 28 years ago. Yeah, and the training part of it was in Honolulu. And then, so 3 months of training and then 3 months, and our outreach was in Thailand.
When you had that experience in YWAM, and there was something about that prompted you to go back. What was that?
Yeah, I think for me, I thought I was, being a Spanish speaker, that we'd end up somewhere in a Spanish speaking culture. But when I just saw all the needs here and I saw everything from the poverty to just having this people group, I felt like the Lord was saying, come to this area, it was something that we started praying about for sure.
Mm. And so how many years later did it take for you to go back to Thailand?
Well, we actually just kind of impromptu did some interviews while we were here with different international schools in Bangkok and got hired at one. It was an American curriculum, and basically kind of walked in, and the principal of the high school was from Oakland, California, which is where Ricky's from. And it was just too many great coincidences all at once. So he basically said, yeah, you guys both got the job. So we actually came back as teachers and both coached basketball at the high school there.
Oh, you both coached. Very interesting. So this is going to help us lead into the eventual sports missions work that you're doing, Ricky. Karen, your piece that you ended up getting involved with was around orphanages. Can we start with you and hear a little bit about what work you're doing there?
Yeah, for sure. My story starts actually when I was born, but I was born in Vancouver and adopted into my family. And I grew up with this sense that I was chosen. My parents did just really making sure that I knew I was loved and that it was meant to be that I was in their family. And so when I was 8, I can remember hearing God say, hey, when you grow up, you're supposed to start an orphanage. And, when you're 8, it's a great age. You just go, oh, okay. So all the pieces that come after that in terms of where and how, and Canada doesn't have orphanages and here. So when we landed in Thailand after teaching and after YWAM, it was in the back of my mind. But when I was at a public hospital in our city one day, visiting my friend's son in the children's ward, and kind of everything changed for me that day. So beside him was a little baby that had been abandoned and was in the last stages of AIDS and was just kind of hoping that she would pass away. There wasn't enough help in terms of, nursing and that kind of thing on the ward. That baby's name was Jintanut. And that just kind of re-sparked that call that I had when I was a little girl. And then I was able to get temporary custody of her and find an orphanage up north in Thailand that would take her. They said, she's really, really far gone. She probably won't make it, but we can promise you that if she passes away, she'll die loved in somebody's arms. And so I just kind of thought, well, okay, that's my piece of her story. And then miraculously, about 6 months later, she totally rallied around and wanted to live, wanted to drink milk. And so today she is 18, this flourishing, beautiful young girl. We're still in touch with her all the time. Yeah, that kind of is the spark that kind of made me think, okay, so maybe that call when I was a little girl is becoming clear now. And so particularly at that time, Thailand was known for quite a large number of HIV and AIDS cases. And so that just narrowed the focus down. And I just really felt like God was saying, yeah, like the kind of the niche this was supposed to take shape as. So we've been open about 15 years, and Thailand doesn't really have a true social welfare system in the sense of like if you're a single mom or, there's no help in that sense. But I think especially being an adopted child, I really didn't want to be taking in children that had parents or relatives. I feel really strongly like that is a much better place to support if they have an aunt or a grandma or something like that. Unfortunately with the HIV AIDS, the stigma and the death of the parents, it actually kind of all just came together to go, okay, this is truly a need. So it's just been amazing to see the children that God rescues and then brings to us and how they're thriving. And it's a new day for HIV for sure.
I can just imagine what that brought for you to have this young baby grow up and survive. And I just want to circle back to that because I wonder how much it meant in her survival story to be surrounded by people that loved on her, held her, cared for her. What's your theory on that?
Absolutely. I mean, she had already been diagnosed with failure to thrive. It was like she had given up herself. yeah, there was a lot of unfortunate things during the hospital stay. Like my friend said, yeah, sometimes the nurses they'll just have to hit her to make her stop crying. There weren't people to hold her. And I've seen that not only in her life, but even the children that come to us. We do get some cases that are full-blown AIDS in children. And usually at about the 6-month mark of being just good nourishment and being loved unconditionally and feeling like all that trauma that they've experienced, just being able to let their guard down a bit and receive love. We often remark as a staff, wow, it's almost like clockwork at about that 6-month mark. They just tend to thrive a lot, but they flourish, kind of like their heart has come home and said, okay, this is my family now. And it's really quite miraculous, honestly, to just see how children are so resilient. I know that's the name of the podcast, but honestly, when these transformations happen, and a lot of that, yeah, is just love and community. Thailand is a very communal culture, so everything is better together. You know, the more people, the better. If you're napping, you don't go to your room and nap. It's just more fun if we all nap on the floor together, you know. And I really think that there's a lot of beautiful things in this culture in particular that lend itself to healing some of those wounds that, yeah, are just so painful from a hard childhood.
Well, and I think of it from an attachment perspective as well. I just wondered in anticipation of us talking, how consistent are the staff? Because I think about the importance of those children then forming an attachment at 6 months. You're talking about them really starting to feel safe in that environment and trusting that they will be cared for. And I understand it doesn't have to just be one. I think just being surrounded by people that are loving on them. But I'm curious, what model have you set up for that to ensure some attachment?
Yeah, absolutely. Our model is that we're trying to create family units, which interestingly, the older our kids get, you know for sure they need it when they're little. We all know that intuitively, but we really find when our kids kind of hit the 20s and then even the later 20s, it's like myself, I still need my mom. Who do I call first thing if I'm in a bit of a crisis? It's still, you know, your mom and dad. So our model is basically that we find it's often a widow or a single mom or somebody who themselves is kind of in a bit of a need. And so far, it just really feels like God has just handpicked those moms and brought them to us. And it's usually word of mouth, or sometimes this mom has a friend who starts off as like a house cleaner with us and then does some respite work, and then kind of goes, wow, I really feel like this is actually a calling in my life. And so when we talk about coming on, it's quite hilarious. I just say to them, yeah, I would like a lifetime commitment, you know, and then we all kind of laugh, and we know just how bizarre that is. But most of the moms are from locally. So I found like if their extended family is all still around, it actually works. They've got their own house. They've got now this big family, but they still have the perks of, you know, every day they still see their relatives. They still eat together, hang out. So yeah, so that's best case scenario, is that a mom comes in and just never leaves, really bonds with those children. So we try not to use the word orphan. And, you know, there's lots of juggling acts we do. Yeah, it's tough when you are an orphan. And so the attachment thing really smooths over all of those hard conversations. So yeah, attachment, every child is different. You know, some kids attach really quick, really easily. Other kids take years. And yeah, we have a couple moms that have been with us the whole time, the whole 15 years. And you can just see that those kids that come into her house, they quickly know, oh, okay, this person's not going anywhere.
Well, the other piece to that I hadn't really considered, we naturally think about the children you're helping, but I hadn't thought about the people that are actually helping and what that probably is doing for them also.
For sure. There's the good and the bad side of that, right? So the great side is that, yeah, when a mom comes to us and says, I feel like this is a calling, like God's actually calling me to do this, that person tends to last for the long haul. The harder part is that it's not like we're getting, you know, women who are coming out of university with a degree in how do you raise children that aren't your own. Yeah. So a lot of it's very organic. Yeah, it just feels very raw. There's no just kind of polished thing that we go, oh, and there's all these books written in Thai. whole idea of attachment theory as an actual study in the universities here has not really made it here yet. Counseling is kind of brand new. It's maybe about a 15-year-old faculty in Thailand, still lots of stigma with that. In that way, the moms really feel like they're doing something significant, like they're actually changing people's lives. Yeah, it's a pretty amazing staff that we have. They're the key to everything good that happens in those kids' lives.
Well, I don't know about you, but when I became a parent, I didn't know what I was doing either, right? We're all just figuring it out as we go. And sometimes it's what we get in return as we figure it out step by step. And, you know, whether it's starting with them as a young baby, as an infant, just feeling like this is something I'm meant to be doing. And it's lovely when we can just trust that. So I love hearing about that. Thank you. And I wonder, Karen, would you have a couple stories that you might like to share with our listeners that maybe would speak to, I'm going to call them success stories, but I think about just the richness over time to even know that this young lady, one of your first children that you worked with, is now 18. I think of that as a success story. But do you have a couple other stories that you might like to share?
Yeah, so many stories. So many stories. I mean, one that comes to mind kind of right away is in the early days when we first opened, the first kids we got a group of 5 boys that were 10 years old. And I had really thought, oh, we're going to start with babies. And everyone knows it's just easier to start with babies. But these boys had been at a Catholic orphanage out in the country, kind of sequestered, kind of on the old model of we're just going to make you comfortable. You're not going to live too long. And then they kind of hit 10 years old and they were thriving and healthy. And so the nuns kind of contacted me and said, we're all women here. These guys are going to go places. So anyway, so we took these boys in. And the great thing about that was that they were just at the age where they could articulate exactly what their hearts needed, what they liked, what they didn't like. And so they saved us from so many well-meaning mistakes that I would have made, you know? And so basically the 2 things that came out of their hearts were just like, number 1, we just want to be like everybody else. We don't want the van with the cute little cartoons on it. Don't do that. And of course I'm on my way to do the cute little van, right? And that saved me a lot of money too. And then the second thing was, we just want one mom, not nannies that come in all the time. We just want one mom who actually knows us. These boys, you know, they're 10 years old and they had never swam because they were told like, oh, you're sickly. You don't want to get cold, even though it's, you know, blazing hot in Thailand all the time. They'd never played soccer. All these things that are just, you know, normal things, because it was all about just like, okay, we just want to keep you alive. Mm-hmm. They had been with us a few months. And again, I'm sitting in church and I felt like God just said, go hire those boys a breakdance teacher. You know, I grew up in a chicken farm really in Abbotsford, British Columbia. You know, my husband grew up in the inner city of Oakland, California. It was me. And, you know, I am kind of an action person. So after church, I go up to our drummer and I'm like, hey, would you happen to know a breakdance teacher? And he, you know, he gets on his motorbike, comes back 5 minutes later and he's like, here's your breakdance teacher. And so his name is Bank. He's like 17 years old, amazing breakdance teacher. And so I hire him to teach these 5 boys breakdance. And so one of the boys, you know, about 5 minutes into that first lesson, he just runs out of the room crying and he's sitting on the steps and I go talk to him and he's like, so they call me Mom Karen, like Meh Karen, right? And he's just like, Meh Karen. He goes, you don't get it. You don't get it. We're sick. We don't do things like, you know, spin on our heads and do, you know, all these amazing things. And it was just this beautiful moment between him and I, you know, early on, we had just opened, to be able to just speak in faith what we were believing for. Yes, you thought you were sick, but you're going to have a long life, not a short life. And you're going to go to university and you're going to get married and have kids and be a breakdancer if you want to be a breakdancer. And anyway, so the amazing thing about that whole thing was a couple weeks later, Bank, the breakdance teacher, took these guys under his arm. Like he was like, hey, these guys are going to be my little brothers. And so really fulfilled that kind of father role for them. And then because Bank was so good, he got us into all these public breakdance competition. And nobody knows that the kids have a health issue or anything like that because they're just amazing. Anyway, to end that whole little breakdance career that we established, we made money for the orphanage, which was fantastic. But we got to go on 2 TV shows. They were big, like TV shows that if you're Thai, you just know those shows, like kind of the equivalent of America's Got Talent. Yeah. So in one, we came in second, and then in one, we came in first, and we won the show. And it was like, it's at the TV studio. And it was just such a thing that I couldn't have written the script myself. You know what I mean? Like,
I bet.
Yeah. And the boys loved it, and they got tons of just acclaim, and so good for their self-esteem. And so that was really fun.
A great example of just the limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves, and to have somebody come along and say, I really think you could do this, and to just remove those barriers and say, let's just take this as an opportunity and see what this is going to bring you. But that story of being sick really was holding them back from just willing to try. And just to hear what that brought them as individuals in confidence. And sports does that, doesn't it? Like it really does help us. And it sounds like they were part of a team doing that, right? They weren't just performing individually. They were going as a group.
Yeah.
And to have this bigger brother model that they really looked up to, what 10-year-old doesn't love hanging out with a 17-year-old?
Yeah. Absolutely. All the pieces were there.
I appreciate your sharing that, Karen. And this sounds like a great segue to bring us into maybe, Ricky, the involvement that you have with sports there in Thailand.
Yeah, I'll give you just a little bit of background. So I played college basketball in Fresno, California. And then when we did the YWAM trip, I felt like at that point I was supposed to give up stuff that I felt was getting in the way of what maybe God was trying to do on this short mission trip. So basketball was it. Like I just finished. I loved it. It's what got me to college. It's what helped me meet my bride. And so as we got there, I just said, okay, I'm going to give this away in a sense. And I'm just going to focus on what the team's going to do. And the stuff we were doing there really wasn't about sports. So I gave it away. And the next day, we were walking around. I said, it's actually kind of easy because this place doesn't even have basketball, and that's my sport. And we go and we walk in this one area we hadn't been to, and they have this whole tournament set up. And it is like happening, referees, fans, like announcers. And I'm going, what? They actually do basketball here. So, and that just opened up a door. So our main ministry became basketball ministry the rest of the time we were there. And the team was all for it. Karen was on my starting lineup. So I'd pass her the ball. They'd go crazy because girls and guys don't really mix, but she played high school ball, so she could hit that shot. And it just became a real open door for us to share with all the Thai people that we'd meet. So we go from school, colleges, you name it. It was awesome. So that got me thinking, like, as we were talking about coming back, we started with a 10-year commitment, and we had 3 families join us in a 10-year commitment. That was in 2000. We started training, and then we came to Thailand in January of 2001. And Karen and I were the leaders of the team. So we just kind of let it percolate a bit and said, okay, Lord, how do you want to use this? And I didn't want that, again, to be kind of getting in the way, but I also already knew that, okay, basketball for sure is a good thing in Thailand. And so we just kind of left it on the burner there. Today, 20 years later, I started a ministry here, and we're calling it Global Sports. And so I'm the director, and it's a whole new avenue, again, within our mission to actually bring in more than just basketball, but all kinds of sports teams from university level to high schools. It can be soccer, volleyball, basketball, and just bring all these sports and go to countries that maybe that would be an open door, because oftentimes some countries are closed, but sports they'll allow sports teams in. And so this has just kind of opened the door for this whole other venture that I'm really excited about. And we've already been doing it for 10 years now. Basketball, it was the start, but now all these other sports are opening up. And then COVID hit, and we had to kind of put it on pause. But for now, we've been reaching out into the Philippines, and then Thailand, and then we're looking at Cambodia and other countries now. So it's really fun stuff.
Fantastic. And just as you talk about it, I just see you light up when you talk about what you're doing there. Like, sports is your jam, right? And I can hear your excitement and the energy around that for you. And when I think about you being someone who played a fairly high level basketball, you know what sports can bring.
Yeah.
What did it bring for you first? Can I start with that?
Yeah, I think it makes you feel like you belong to a team, because the sports I've always played been team sports, and that's the teams we want to bring over. So you automatically just have this concept that, you know, you're a family, you're a group of people with the same mission, with some kind of passion that you're about. And so I think as I look at what basketball has done to me, it's opened that whole door that these are lifelong friends. Like, even I think about high school and especially college. Some of those are my best friends that I still keep in touch with. Some of them have come to Thailand. Some of them support the orphanage now. It's really, really cool. And so I also love the connection between sports and then what we're doing here. People come to see this place, a place where they know what's happening, and friends tell their friends, you got to go. And then our mission, obviously, is always promoting it. But sports has brought in a whole different group of people. And some of these people generally wouldn't come to places like Thailand for a mission trip, but sports gets them on these teams. And they said, hey, I can use this gift that, maybe I never knew I could use it in this way to go help people all over the world. And so when we go, we're going to go to communities and help do food distribution. We're going to go and go to places where we can teach English. We've done an eyeglass clinic where a whole basketball team comes into a school, and these are kids who never would have been afforded glasses, and now we're giving them glasses. And we trained this basketball team. They thought it was going to be all dribbling balls, and now they're actually helping people get glasses. So it's fun how sports really morphs into whatever you want it to be, as long as there's a vision and a passion behind it.
And what stands out for me about that is just similar to Karen's story, where both sides get to benefit. You get to play a sport that you love, but then tie that into ways of helping others. Some of the other folks I've been interviewing for the podcast, that theme just seems to come up over and over, of what we get personally when we help others. So when you talk about being part of a team and your excitement and what that brought for you personally, tell me how that ties into what you want to offer in Thailand with your sports.
Yeah. When I started this, I really wanted people to kind of get out of their comfort zones and go to a place maybe like Thailand, and now we're going to go all over the world, really, but just to get out of their comfort zone and know that they can be used in a whole different culture. It doesn't just have to be a lot of the people we get are from Canada or the US. You get to experience something in a whole different way. You maybe even get to see a part of your life that you didn't even know existed. And being on a team will force some of that out, because not everyone's going to just be like, whoa, I love this guy. This guy's my lifelong friend. But you got to work at some of these things. And we talk about that early on. What is going to make a successful team? So people, maybe on a sports level, you leave it on the court and that's it. But here, now you're living with people, you're doing day-to-day life with people, and that can be sometimes overwhelming for some. So what I love is that it gets us out of our comfort zone. It sees that you could be in a whole different other culture and still thrive in that culture as you are open to it. And we always say some of the best people that come on these short-term teams are not actually the people who come to teach or look at me, I'm a basketball player and I'm going to show you how to get better. But actually the best are the ones who come to learn. And we see that over and over and over. Yeah, you're going to do some basketball. Yeah, we're going to play a bunch of games. Yeah, we're going to have some fun times doing, what you guys come over here to do. But in that, we also can learn from this culture. And I especially love it, again, when it connects to the orphanage and these kids who really, they already had, it was not even 2 strikes. It was pretty much 3 strikes going against them in a culture like Thailand, where if you have a disease that many of them have, then you already are at the lowest of the low. And for them to see these kids and interact with them and to see the joy that they have, it just speaks volumes into their lives. Like, to go, what am I complaining about in my life? Where, yeah, there's hardships for sure everywhere, But when they kind of come together and they can work on those together and hear each other's stories, that just brings life, and a whole nother part of them, I think, comes out in these trips. So I love that part of the mission trip, that experience that you can only get once you get out of that comfort zone.
Yeah. Well, again, it's that reciprocity of learning from each other. So what age would they be in coming and being involved with these teams coming over?
The recruiting that we've done has been last 2 years of high school or above. So the majority of the people we would get would be in the 20 to 24 age group. We have taken some as young as 17, 18. And I think part of it is the levels that we're playing at this point are going to be really high, like a pro level in Thailand or a top college. In the Philippines are even better because that is a basketball nation. And so we don't want to come and then get beat by 50 points every time. So we're actually looking for people who've actually played and are skilled. But we're open to anybody who comes, and they're open knowing what the trip is about. You don't just have to be the star basketball player on your team, but you have to have openness to want to be a part of this trip. And it helps to be able to make a few shots.
I love that. It's tying into giving them a purpose. And every athlete that enjoys their sport wants to play as much as they can. But to tie that into making a difference in another country and connecting in that way sounds like a great model.
Yeah, that's what kind of has been the big goal, is as we look, we've had over 200 participants now, and I've done some follow-up phone calls. Probably about 40% want to come back. And I said, that's a good thing, but we want some newbies too. But we're taking some back in a leadership level. But it's really cool to see that this has impacted them. And now they're wanting to start things in their neighborhood. How do we reach out now and go into these communities that they do it in Thailand? Why did it take Thailand for us to think, wait, we can do this in our neighborhood here that need help? And so we're starting to see that. And that's where it's going. Yes, that's why we want to do this. It's bigger than just our little mission trip.
Well, I really like what you just said, because sometimes we don't know what it's going to bring us. Sometimes we have this idea, or we hear something that sounds kind of interesting and we go, maybe I'll just go check it out. But we really don't know what that's going to bring for us. Similar to you folks going to YWAM, just jumping in, not knowing what it's going to bring you, but look at all of the ripples that have happened as a result. And if I were to pull out a message from that, it would be to say, if there's something niggling on people's minds and they think, I kind of want to be involved with something more meaningful, it doesn't always have to be across the world, but maybe it's something they could start in their own backyard, or to recognize the difference they can make just by jumping in.
Absolutely. Every little experience, that you have when you're younger, all of a sudden you just go, oh, okay, that's why I had that, because that prepared me for this moment. And in Thailand, there's just been some crazy moments where the groundwork has been laid. I think kind of what you're saying is like, just put yourself out there, just get out there. And once you're moving, but yeah, if you just kind of wait for it to drop in your lap, it's a long wait.
Yeah. So just taking those first steps. Well, and before we move on too far, I wanted to check with you, Ricky, to see if you had a story or two that you wanted to share.
There's a few good ones, but I'll give you the one that comes to mind right away. I was visiting at her college in Kansas, and I was going to speak at the chapel there. And the coach came to me and said, hey, can you talk to this kid? And I said, what's his story? He said, well, he's highly recruited, and we're thinking of kicking him off the team because he was just getting into trouble, party, a fight, and they were actually going to meet to see if he should still be at the school. And so I talked to him. I said, hey, why don't you come on this trip? And I think it would be a life changer. And he was kind of going, well, I don't know if that trip's for me. So he went back. The school in the end said he'd be on probation. He had to miss a bunch of games. And so he decided to come on the trip that summer. And we saw is a guy's life transformed. So he came here, and the guy was phenomenal. On a basketball level, he's probably the best player we've ever had. Like, he was that good. He went back the next year, and they just said, what do you do with this kid? I said, well, I didn't do anything. I said, I think he got out of his box. Fast forward now, he ended up marrying his college sweetheart that he had met there right away. They have a kid now, and he's in the community. He's involved. He's at one of the main churches there in town. It's a small town in Hillsboro, Kansas. And he's just had an impact. And now he's actually thinking about what he wants to do in terms of helping kids, just like how I helped him. So he's now a basketball coach speaking into the lives of these guys. And he's one of our big recruiters now to send kids this way that he knows that need something like this. There's a guy who probably should have been kicked out of school, and then his life was transformed. He saw things here, he said, he never thought he would experience, because he just thought he'd never even get out of his state. He just didn't travel. And to come halfway around the world and to work with these kids, it just was a life transforming thing for him and what he needed at that point.
Love it. It really speaks to the importance of mentorship as well. Somebody just coming into your life at the right time that sees that things are not necessarily going your way for any number of reasons. And often we're looking for something at a critical time in our lives. And so as another level of resiliency and the importance of having people that come in and take you under their wing for a time and show you some other aspects of life that you may not have discovered otherwise.
Yeah, that's right.
And when I think about resilience and I think about the work that you're doing there, what has it brought for each of you individually?
I often, when I share my story, like we have lots of volunteers that come, or backpackers, like your daughter, I often hear myself saying that my own question to God is like, why did he choose me? I feel like it's this incredible honor. In reality, there's a lot of hard times.
I bet.
Like if we're just shooting straight here, it's not for the faint of heart. You're really fighting for the future and the destiny, right, of these children. And often we just look at our kids when they're struggling. We're like, wow, it really is. It's like we're kind of stepping in and saying, no, you can't. Maybe their parents have died already, but this kid's going to have an amazing life. So there is the hard parts, but even the hard parts, when you're advocating and fighting for justice for a child who really has no one else, it is so fulfilling. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I'll have people go, oh, feel sorry for you. Like you're getting calls all day, all night. And it's weird because it's not only fulfilling, it's almost like you feel like it's surreal. Sometimes it feels like a buzz, like when you see things are opening up for this child because somebody, whether it's my staff or me, like we all play our own roles. Yeah, so there is that self-gratification, but it definitely makes you just feel like, wow, this is meaningful. This is significant. I'm doing something that matters, even though on the big scale of things, it's one life at a time. Yeah, it just kind of makes you feel like you get up in the morning like, okay, I've got a mission today. I've got to enter into their story and try and be an advocate for them.
Well, I can hear the sense of purpose for you and what that brings for you as meaning. And just on that note, what stood out for me is we can take our own kids for granted. We've been raising our own kids, and you go through the hard times, you go through those teenage years where they're challenging you and pushing back. And there's lots of moments I've talked to parents as well where they're just tired and they're just tired of fighting. And it's hard to see the reward when you're in it day to day. But I also keep in mind what you just said, Karen, is even through the hardships of all those challenges, of all those kids, different obstacles that might come up, it's recognizing the big picture and what you're driven to do every day. What stood out for me as a parent also is when somebody said, our kids are not meant to be for us, that they are born through us. And the work that you're doing there every day is just through you that you are able to have this role. And so that stood out for me as a parent, as your kids grow, they have their own lives and they can't be there for us. They need to be out there in the world doing just as they're called to do.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So I appreciate your message on that as well. So Ricky, how about for you? What has this brought for you?
Yeah, I was thinking first about just resiliency, and there is a toughness when you live overseas. I was looking up the definition, the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. you're going to hit lots of hardships, living overseas, away from your family. All that stuff we miss is there all the time, especially on birthdays. Christmas is the hardest, all those things you hear a lot of people who've lived overseas talk about. And so you kind of have to have this toughness, but what Karen says, but there's purpose. So that helps on those. There's calling, so that you can always go back to that. No, I know I'm supposed to be here, and there's purpose to that. When I think of ALH and Karen and how she has the resilience to keep doing this, like if you knew how much she was on the phone every day, people come here and go, wow, this is amazing. 30 kids. We know they have this HIV stuff, and yet they're happy and they're thriving, and they see all the good stories. And that's good. I mean, you want to inspire them. But then the other side is like, wow, you have to be resilient, because you wouldn't make it for sure, not more than a year, if you were doing this type of work. So I often joke when we speak, I say, I have the fortune to actually live with somebody who is living their dream. And so I'm basically just a trophy husband. I started off and I just kind of talk and just, and now for the real show, Karen. And so it's really cool to wake up with a person and you know that this is the dream that she's been given and she's doing it. Like, not too many people actually get to live the dream, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be hard. And there's really hard days. But then to see that, again, that resiliency is so cool to see, because it inspires me. So that when I have a hard day doing this basketball stuff and nobody's signing up, I can't complain. So it just helps me too in the work I'm doing to really go after it and have passion and make sure it's at a level that we are saying, hey, we're going to give it our best shot, because we want to have people come here and their lives be changed forever. And so I get to do that for people coming over here. We get lots of short-term teams. I usually am the one that greets them and meets them. Karen and I both love doing that. And so we've had people like your daughter who we were recruiting at one point saying, hey, I think you need to be in Thailand, Brianna. Like, this is the place for you. And she can tell you all about that, because we tried really hard. But, she said, nope, I'm going to go to Kenya. I said, hey, we'll go visit you in Kenya someday then. So when I just think about that, though, I just think, yeah, every day living with purpose and knowing that this is where you're supposed to be. So when those days come, and those hard days, which are more than the good days sometimes, we can look back and say, no, we know we were called, and we know there's purpose to that.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Even as you both talk about what that brings for you, I appreciate your saying, there are a lot of hard times, but even despite that, you can hear the energy and the passion that you have for what you're doing, and knowing and trusting why you're there.
I think the one thing about resilience, the highs are higher than maybe if we had taken a different path, and the lows are lower, but you don't actually get the highs if you try and somehow finagle it so you don't actually have to go through the lows. I often kind of think the cost of disobedience, right? If you feel this, niggling or whatever you want to call it, calling, the cost of saying no to that, I think is higher than actually just doing it, and going, okay, we're gonna just go for it.
Well, I know it's very late there for you folks, so I'm going to say thank you again. I really appreciate your time. And this podcast is really maybe just going to create a spark for people. There may be somebody out there that goes, I wonder what that would be like to go there and just see what this is about, and maybe find a way that they could be involved in their corner of the world. I look forward to learning more, and maybe one day coming to visit you in Thailand. I know our daughter would love for us to join her there and come back to see you. So perhaps it'll be a whole family in tow.
Awesome.
Yes, love it. That would be great.
Well, I'll look forward to that. Thanks, folks.
It was fun. Very fun to talk to you.
Thank you.
I have a feeling that I will not be the only one who heard the enthusiasm and energy Ricky and Karen radiate when they talk about their mission work in Thailand. There are just so many things that we could pull out of that, but I'm going to try to focus on a couple of themes from this conversation. One is that when we find meaning and purpose in our lives and actively pursue those sparks within us, we are going to do whatever it takes to make it happen over and over again as much as necessary. As in Karen and Ricky's case, their highs may be higher and their lows may be lower. But knowing what and for who they are doing this gives them life and the necessary energy to stay the course. Secondly, Ricky reminded us of the benefits team sports can bring. Whether it's for the volunteers that travel to be part of this team, they get to be part of something meaningful, they are playing a sport they love, while making a difference in someone else's life. For those of you who have played team sports, you can probably relate to the way in which sports provides a sense of family and belonging. I imagine this may have also been the case for the 5 boys from the orphanage who pursued breakdancing with such success. Thirdly, I think it is also valuable to remember that stepping out of those familiar shoes and taking the perspective of someone else can also shift our lens. Whether it is traveling to another culture, discovering how others may be experiencing their world, or lending a hand if you can, what might you learn about yourself in return? A key ingredient here seems to be to maintain an open mind to learning. And just taking a page from the Thai culture, everything is better together. On reflection of this conversation with Ricky and Karen, I was recalling a book I read by Michael Singer called The Surrender Experiment. It is a bit of an autobiography of the amazing successes and rich experiences that Michael Singer has had in his life once he let go and trusted that spark within him. It is an amazing read as it truly highlights the way in which we might get in the way of our own life journey that we might be on. We do not have to travel overseas to follow our purpose. If you have noticed a deep spark inside of you that you've been trying to ignore, what might happen if you fanned that and it became a flame? Recognizing we can't always wait for these opportunities to come to us, what will it take to step out of your comfort zone? What are you waiting for? Thank you for listening to this episode of A Resilience Project. We would not be doing this podcast without you. If you or someone you know has an inspirational story or is helping to build resilience in their community, please email me at cindy@aresilienceproject.com. In fact, email me either way. I would love to hear from you. My hope is to feature an episode periodically on your letters of resilience. I'm very interested in hearing your story of how you have tackled hard things and what worked for you. With your permission, I hope to share some of these stories along the way with our listeners. Also, check out my website, aresilienceproject.com, to learn more about our amazing guests. Your presence here is important because together we are cultivating a village of resilient individuals. You are creating a space for their stories to be shared and a sacred space for learning to occur. I also have a favor. I would love for you to go to your preferred podcast platform, rate and review the podcast so that we will know how we're doing. I also would like to express my gratitude to the amazing team of volunteers that have jumped on board to support this project. You will find each of those beautiful people on my website on the team page. As you go about this week, I invite you to think about one way that you can continue to grow your resilient muscle. What is one thing you can start with today? See you next week.
Ever find yourself waiting endlessly at a big box pharmacy, feeling like just another number? At Tablet Pharmacy, they provide the personalized service you deserve. They offer free delivery and blister packaging options to make managing your medications easier than ever. Check their competitive prices online at tabletpharmacy.ca